everyone, I'm Carrie from Monroe Street Art Center, and I'm really excited to be here today with you creating our very own Watercolor Wisconsin. So you should have all of the materials in front of you from your art kit in order to make this watercolor piece of art. I hope that you have fun with it and enjoy the process. Okay everybody, we are ready to get started on our Watercolor Wisconsin. So the first thing that we need to do is to transfer the outline of the shape of our state onto our watercolor paper. In order to do this, everyone has received a outline of Wisconsin on just a piece of copy paper. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna flip this over, and on the back, I am going to use my pencil to pretty much just scribble along the line where the outline of the state is located. I do not need to trace perfectly. I'm just working to get the lead of the pencil onto this area of the paper so that I will be able to transfer it onto my watercolor paper. Now, we have our pencil lines or sort of scribbles covering around where the state outline is on the back of the paper. And now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to carefully place it in the center of my watercolor paper. I recommend using a small piece of masking tape or Scotch tape, some sort of a tape that doesn't have a strong adhesive to it, so that you can carefully tape your outline copy paper to your watercolor paper. This way it won't shift around when you are tracing the line. Now I'm using a pen or a marker, something that's got sort of a hard tip to it, and I'm going to outline the outline of the state. It's a good idea to pause and just carefully lift up your copy paper to make sure that that outline is transferring the way that you want it to. I'm checking, mine looks good so far, so I'm going to continue to work on the outline. Okay, now I have traced on the entire outline, and when I pick up my traced piece of paper, my piece of tracing paper, I can see the completed transfer onto my watercolor paper. Ta-da! So now I can start making some decisions on what sort of design I would like to paint onto my state. So you can see from my examples, I really like using the location of Madison as a starting point for the sort of radial design in this piece. I also used the location of Madison as the starting point for a radial design that has a heart in the center for this one. This other piece that's a work in progress is simply flowers that I've started painting. So it's really up to you. If you have family in Milwaukee or if you are a fan of Green Bay, you might choose a different city within the state to base your designs off of. It's really up to you. Okay, so now I'm gonna start by creating my design for this piece with pencil. And I'm gonna do something similar to this design that has a heart where the city of Madison would be located within the state, and then create some radial lines around that heart. So I'm going to start out by making a heart near where Madison is located. I'm using light pencil lines because I'm going to eventually outline everything in permanent marker, and then we'll go back and sort of erase the pencil lines that are still showing through. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my ruler, and I'm going to start drawing those radial lines out from my heart. It's up to you how many lines you would like to make if this is the type of design that you're doing. As you can see, I made my lines very close together in this piece, so it made for a lot more kind of tiny spaces to paint. If you're not wanting to paint spaces that are quite so small, you can have your lines be a bit further apart. So now that I have my lines drawn with pencil, I am going to trace over everything, including the outline of the shape and the lines of the design on the interior with a permanent marker. I am also going to use my ruler to help keep my permanent marker lines straight, because our hands get a bit shaky when we try to make straight lines. We have to be just a bit careful about not dragging our ruler across the page when we have a permanent marker, because you run the risk of smearing that marker and having it, sort of bleed across the page where you might not want it to. Now that I have all of my interior lines traced, I'm going to go ahead and trace the outline. As you're working on something like this, never forget that it's easier at times to turn your paper than it is to kind of tilt the angle of your hand. So make sure that you're always working at it from the angle that is most comfortable for you. Okay, so now I've completed my outline work with my permanent marker. And I'm going to go back in and use my pencil and just erase any of the pencil lines that are still visible through where the outline took place. Now, let's brush off all of those eraser bits, and we are ready to start painting. Okay, so now I'm prepared with all the things that I need in order to start painting my Wisconsin. I have my cup of water with my paintbrushes in it and my watercolor paints. I also have a small bit of paper towel handy so that I can wipe my brush off as needed. So whenever we're working with watercolors, we always recognize that the more water that we use with our paints, the lighter the color will appear on the paper. The less water we use, the more vibrant or darker the color will appear. So I'm gonna start at the center of my painting with my heart on the city of Madison. And I'm gonna work my brush onto my paint so that I have a good amount of paint that does not have too much water on it. Now that I have that done, I'm going to start working around the outside, and you can make some choices as far as colors go. You can choose to do a specific type of color scheme, like on this one I have a red heart and then I chose to do cool colors around the outside. You could choose to work with rainbows like I did with this one, or you can sort of make it up based on your favorite colors. I think with this one I am going to try to go with maybe some warm colors now that we are in spring and it's nice to see the sunshine. I'm going to turn my paper upside down so that I can have the angle that feels most comfortable. And I'm going to start out laying paint down towards the center of this shape. And I'm not using very much water because I want it to feel like a very rich and vibrant yellow. But I'd like the color to sort of soften as it goes across the page. So I'm going to just rinse off my brush and not put any more paint on it. And then just use the water to move that yellow across the space. More yellow onto my brush and make the center part have a bit more pigment on it. And now I'm going to go ahead and rinse off my brush, and I'm going to move on to another color. So when it comes to being in the center of these pieces that are a little bit skinnier, I'm using my brush at an angle sideways. So I'm not using the flat part of the brush, I'm using sort of the side to make sure that I can fit within that smaller space. And again, I'm using not as much water in the center because I want it to be more vibrant color in the middle. And then as I move out within the space, I can move my brush so that I'm using the flat side. So I'm filling more space, and then I'm just gonna get some water, no more paint, and then just move the paint that's already on the paper across that space. If you ever find that there's a spot like this where you're feeling like there's maybe too much water or too much paint that's kind of sitting in that one spot, you can go ahead and wipe off your brush so that it's mostly dry, and you can use that to soak up any extra water or paint that you have on your paper that you might want to redistribute or just pick up off the page entirely. Up my very last piece of the state. Use my purple paint. I have to go back and add some more on this shape because it's just a little larger than some of the other ones. I said, there's a lot of room for creativity within this project and making your own creative choices based on what you like. So you could use your own favorite colors and still do this type of radial design. You could change where the focal point is if you wanted to choose a different geographic location to focus on, or you can do something entirely different, like a floral design like this one. And in this instance, when I chose to do a floral design, I painted all of my flowers first and wanted to then go back and show you how I am going to take care of the background between the flowers and blend two colors together. So because I chose to do some warmer tones in my floral design, I'm going to choose cool colors for my background. And I'm going to start out with this purple and do this towards the top of my state. I'm trying to make sure that I'm saturating it with a fair amount of paint. So remember, that means not quite as much water and more paint so that I can get a sort of richer color that I'm painting with. And then I'm going to use just some water on my brush to blend that out a bit. And now I'm going to have this color mix in with a blue so that it gives kind of a transition from one color to the next. And I'm going to go ahead and get some blue paint on my brush, and then I'm going to lay it right on top of where the purple paint ends. And I'm going to go back with a clean brush that just has water on it. To go back and kind of blend the two together. Now that there's a nice transition from purple to blue, I'm going to go back in with some more blue. Kind of fill down between the flowers. So now I've got my two very different designs completely done. And like I said, there's a lot of room for your own creativity with this project. So you can choose to make a more organic design or something that's a bit more geometric, but either way, it's a way of celebrating where we are from, where we live, and having some fun with it as well. Thank you so much for painting with me.